So a couple of weeks ago, I had you guys submit your work for a critique, but it was with a twist. How marketable is your work? Like any other job, art is a skill that you develop over a lifetime. The more you develop that skill, the more opportunities are going to open up for you. However, I do believe that you can start making money from your art at almost any skill level. That being said, art and marketing are two very different skill sets. So the sooner that you start developing your marketing skills alongside your art skills, the better off you're going to be in the long run. Obviously, if you're the very best at something, you're going to stand out. You're going to have a lot easier time getting clients or selling your work. But what happens when you don't have any skills at all and you can't draw a thing? What do? So if I couldn't draw at all and I really just needed to make money today, I'm going to have to rely on a couple other skill sets than my drawing skills, right? Maybe I'll draw a stick figure and I'm going to write art is hard next to it. It's going to be haha super relatable, right? I'm going to turn this into a sticker. There will be an audience who will be interested in buying this product. Again, it's haha relatable, right? So quirky, so fun. And as you develop your art skill and you're able to accomplish bigger and greater things, different type of products and different types of avenues and job opportunities are going to make more sense for you. Maybe your dream is to have your art on magic cards one day, but if you don't paint as good as those artists, there's going to be a disconnect. If you're still making stick figures, obviously you're going to have to hone those skills to get to that point. If you haven't had years to dedicate to becoming the most skillful artist, it's going to be hard to have your artwork noticed over, say, Ross Draws or Loish, Emirichu or Chen, these absolute unit of art royalty, just based on its technical prowess. They're probably going to beat you in that aspect. So honing other interesting ways to get your art noticed can be very valuable. A super skilled artist can afford to be super serious and edgy. However, after a couple years of you honing those skills, you'll have also been trained in being somebody with a personality. And then you're going to be a double banger. How will they be able to resist you? We're not going to be looking at your work for its technical merit, unless I think the technical skill is holding the piece back for its marketability in some way. Is there any advice I can give to make a particular work more profitable for you? As artists, we also have to make a living, right? So let's get started. Okay, our first submission is by Zachary. It is a playing card deck. So right off the bat, I already think that this is very marketable for a couple reasons. The first one is it's clearly a product and we know what the product is. There's no confusion. General audiences are going to see this. They're going to know what it is, right? So also the artwork is really good. So you're going to also get like the art nerds who are just into the art that also want to buy it. And then like the third demographic I think that this also appeals to is the collector's space. So something that I was super surprised by, because I also made a poker card set a couple years ago, is that there's a huge collector's space. So I think this is hitting multiple demographics. And these are the types of products that get like general audiences into the art space. So that can help promote other work that might not be as easily consumable. That being said, so the next step would be to actually physically make it into a product if you haven't already. So we know what it's supposed to be. So if you're having trouble, say, financing this poker card set, I think there's a couple routes you can take. The one that I took was I did a pre-sale just on Etsy. And at the time I had like 0 following on social media and I wasn't really doing in-person events. Because that collector space existed, I was able to fund that entire production of my poker cards at the time. I think I did an edition of like 100, which isn't very many, but at the time that was a big win for me. So I think you could start with like a small edition, do a pre-sale. Also, there's websites like Kickstarter and stuff that kind of have this built-in pre-sale mentality about them. So you could definitely go that route if you're worried about funding the actual production. I went through makeplayingcards.com for my manufacturing just because it was one of the cheaper options that I could afford at the time. If you can manage to go through some of the more prestigious manufacturers like Bicycle, this is going to be more appealing to that collector space. I think your design sensibilities and like what this set is supposed to be is so clear that I think you could also try to put this in front of like actual card manufacturers and see if you can partner with them I think there's more money to be made in the independent space in the long run, but if that's a route you wanted to go, I definitely could see this being put in front of one of those companies and them taking interest in it. My only major criticism is actually about this page, which I think conceptually is great, but when you look at the banner at the top and some of the concept work, which I think is totally fine to include and super cool to look at, like I actually love these concepts. However, there's a bit of a disconnect from the black and white ink style drawings to the actual final project, which is much more colorful and feels much different. So I would say just make sure that whatever image you're using to advertise this product should represent the final product. So I wouldn't necessarily have this image, which is a great image, as your banner for this page. I'm not sure if this banner is for your entire website or if it's specifically for this card deck. Like, I wouldn't click on this image and expect, colorful work, right? And then if you want to add in, the concept work, which might feel a little different there at the end as like, behind the scenes, I think that's fine, but make sure it's not front facing for your product or any of the promotions for it. And the other aspect of this is because it is such a recognizable product that people understand, I think you could start contacting galleries or different boutiques that might want to carry your products and see if they're interested in buying some bulk from you at a wholesale price. I think definitely a product like this could easily move in that regard as well. And you could just start with like different local stores that you think would be a good fit for the types of products that you sell, all the way up to contacting bigger licensing companies. I think this really hits the sweet spot of where it feels really unique and fresh, but also is something that everybody instantly understands because it's this item that everybody is familiar with. Okay, this is our next submission, and you're asking how to grow on your channel and if this is the type of work you should be doing, as it seems like you have a second account with a different art style. So right off the bat, I like this. I think character-focused work is really popular right now. Fantasy work's also really popular right now, which this kind of falls into both those camps. So, you're definitely playing those trends, which is good. I will say, looking at the rest of your portfolio, I'm not sure if I can show this on YouTube, but there's a lot of sexy ladies, which is totally fine. Everybody loves a good sexy lady. I noticed that you have a Patreon for more spicy versions, which I think is a great idea. However, the image that you submitted kind of feels like the outlier out of your work. Like everything feels a little spicy. But then you have this piece, which isn't as provocative as your other work. It's just kind of this cool lady looking real high fantasy. Again, I think not safe for work content. You have to play a little dance with social media if you want to try to promote that type of work. So I think this, type of work that is a bit more safe for all audiences is definitely a lot easier to market. That being said, you can use that to your advantage, where let's say you make a whole portfolio of this type of work that still might have that elegance to it, but doesn't have quite the spice. And then you can use that to kind of garner attention from more general audiences. And then you can kind of be like, oh, if you want to see more, here's my Patreon. You know what I mean? So having a body of work that you can put front facing on social media or even sell at certain events that you wouldn't be able to necessarily sell the more spicy versions at will open up more options for you. And in turn, that non-spicy work ends up being a catalyst to promote your spicier work. But figuring out how to dual promote, work that is acceptable, in public spaces to the work that isn't so acceptable in public spaces will help you tremendously in growing that following. So our next submission is by Sundrop Studios. It is this animatic, as a product, super hard to sell because you're always just going to be selling the print version here, right? That being said, a couple things I would work on. Again, these are technical things, not necessarily marketing things. Right off the bat, this cat I think is very good. I think it's probably my favorite part about the animatic. It also doesn't loop, which I think can be a big factor in whether 2-second animatic is satisfying. I know you asked if you think making 2D art into animation is worth it, as it's super time consuming, specifically to make it more noticeable on social media. In my own personal experience from making 2D animations out of my illustrations, I haven't noticed the biggest gains on social media, but maybe it's just something I haven't mastered yet, as it's something I've only been playing around with the last couple years. So take my advice on this topic with a grain of salt. However, I think if this is something you're passionate about, then absolutely go for it. If you're only doing it as a marketing strategy for the rest of your work, then I think focusing on making sure that that animation, those couple seconds, is as satisfying as possible to the viewer. If you want to give that piece any opportunity to blow up in the social media algorithm past what the original illustration was already going to give you. And then once you get the satisfaction levels of the animatic up, I think it becomes more viable as a marketing tool. Selling it directly, I think the print, the still is always going to kind of outweigh the animatic, as there's just not an optimal way to currently monetize, short form animation in that way past it being a marketing tool. What do you think about this?
Oh, it's cute.
How would you market it?
How would I market it?
Yeah, how would you market it?
As an animation? Or as a piece? As a print?
I don't know, that's the question, right?
I feel like it's stronger as a still. Because in the animation, like, the motion isn't readable immediately. And then all the ghosts are turning into the same shape. If you're noticing, like, gradually all of them become, like, the same size.
Yeah, okay, I see that. I think they almost overcomplicated it. Like, I feel like, it's like a 2-second animatic, and, like, it doesn't loop, and it's, like, overly complicated for what it is, right? Like,
yeah.
I think they could have just either been bobbing, like, back and forth, and then it's, very clear and concise like the still is, or, like, I think they needed to go farther where, like, these movements are clearer and, I don't know, more interesting, maybe.
You could do less frame, but stronger frame.
That's what I think too. I think just simplifying it would have made it more satisfying to the viewer.
I think because they wanted the smoke to be, like, going up, I think they think it's, like, they need a lot more frame than they actually do. Yeah, everything is very, like, structural and clean, and the smoke just looked like a, what is it called? Airbrush?
It does feel stylistically a little off, and then it's kind of like, especially where it passes through the night sky, it kind of like changes the composition for a second a bit too drastically, and it's just like my eye just goes straight to that contrast where those hard lines pass through that like black night sky, and it's distracting to like the movement that I'm sure took a ton of time to do over here. And I think right now the still is a bit more satisfying than the animation, unfortunately, because it is beautiful work. I think this artist definitely has a strong eye for like products.
Very consistent on like the palette and the style.
And then it's hard, like, if you've already posted the still image, you're kind of cutting out a lot of audience because they've already seen it. So like Instagram's so touchy these days. It's like nothing wants to blow up, but if it does, then it like super blows up. So it's definitely a gamble. Okay, our next piece is by Alyssa, and we have this very cool piece. It's a very dynamic piece, so definitely very striking. I do think there is some issues with the hand and the angle of this sword a bit, some technical things going on there that are a little wonky, but overall super cool piece. Again, I think character work is super popular right now. You said it was a commission for somebody's D&D character. I'm very familiar with these. That being said, no offense to this person's D&D character. It does feel a little generic, like there's not a lot of storytelling elements going on. Technically, it is very well done and, composed really well. Like, I really love this type of work visually, but when we start getting into like D&D and role-playing and stuff, the more interesting aspect, I think, can be, what kind of story elements can you start adding to it? Obviously, when it's not your character, that's kind of out of your control. But if you were to do, like, say, a whole portfolio of these, that could be an aspect to focus on. If I look kind of at the rest of your work, definitely with this like anime inspired style, I think like younger audiences are definitely going to be more interested in your work than say older audiences, like, in-person anime cons. Granted, there's a lot of competition in this space, right? So I think you have really good composing skills. You have really good technical skills, aside from a couple little awkward things here and there that I'm sure you can work out. I think the storytelling element of it can definitely elevate your work, right? I think, having a bigger series of pieces, right? Like if I was going to commission you, like I know you're a good artist, right? But I'd want to see multiple images like this to convince me that, hey, it wasn't just like a fluke or a one and done. Like I definitely want to see like how you would handle like maybe a bigger character or handle like a male character, right? Especially when you see a lot of anime artists have kind of similar like same face syndrome. If my character, say, doesn't fit that model, I might be hesitant to want to hire you or even inquire about your prices or whatever. I think that will really elevate you past a lot of these anime inspired artists out there. I will also say, especially like with some artists who do similar styles to you, they end up having like their own OCs and they start painting them over and over, and then their audience gets attached to that OC and wants to know more about them, and then they kind of develop a story through their art, doing multiple pieces throughout the, you know, their art career, right? So that could be a potential avenue for you as well. Okay, our next submission is by an artist that I've been a fan of for quite a while, so that's exciting. So we have this piece here. This does seem a little different from your other work. I think it's normally pretty character focused, right? Let me take a look. No, you have other landscapes as well, but definitely like this is kind of what I know you for. But you always have these beautiful shapes and kind of that type of stuff. So, you know, definitely no issues in the technical realm. So you say that this is a series featuring your mascot, which I see right there, and that you're wondering about the lighting and ways to push this type of piece further for conventions and events. Okay, one second. Let me call in the expert. Sing!
What?
As a background artist, what do you think?
It's cute. It's really cute. I like bikes. Bike sells.
You also sell landscapes at conventions. Do you think it does well? Because I think this is kind of... I don't see them doing a lot of background stuff, typically.
A print like this, I think, would sell at a con. Because not a lot of people do background at conventions, so when you do, you already kind of stand out. If we, like, look at this piece, like, palette-wise, it looks really cohesive, and it's really nice. It's a vibe that I would purchase. I think, if anything, maybe just more lighting. Like, if you squint your eye... everything kind of just like blend in together.
Yeah, there's like no focal point.
Yeah, if there's like light from the shop. Yeah.
Like even just subtly, just to kind of move your eye through the piece a bit more intentionally, I think could be good.
Yeah, it will like pop out the shape of the doors and like bring in the lighting. Like it could have rim lighting on your little guy. That would be really cute.
Yeah.
Just like more opportunity to put colors around the piece.
Do you think it is like good enough for like being a background artist or something? And they didn't ask this, but I'm just wondering.
I think it's a little rougher for background in animation, because you definitely need it to be really clean.
Maybe concept work then?
Concept work, yeah, I could see that. Or just like color script, because you just mainly need the color and figuring out the mood. And it doesn't need to be super detailed and like super cleared, layered, and everything like that.
So our next submission is by Miguel. We have this beautiful Beetroot Knight. I really love this piece. It's super elegant. I think this could be a very successful in a lot of different markets. Let's see what you have to say. So you say the problem that you're running into is that a lot of people don't understand that it's an original concept and that it gets a lot of attention, but people don't end up buying it, and that you're wondering if you should make it into a smaller size. So a couple things. Let's take a look. You know, I'm looking at your other work and you definitely have a lot of fan art. So I think that right off the bat is going to confuse people when they see recognizable characters next to characters they don't recognize. They're always going to wonder if something's original or not. So that's going to be kind of the main issue there. And kind of how you've marked it here, where it's like fan art, like we know that this is, you know, fan art, right? You could also reword this in a different way for your website where it's like, oh, personal work or something like that. And you can kind of split up your convention booth if that's a problem there as well. You know, you're still going to get those questions, unfortunately, especially if you have a piece of Zelda right next to, say, this piece. So that's going to be kind of hard to avoid. As far as making it into smaller pieces, I think for me, when I'm thinking about print sizing, I try to only print a specific piece in one size and not multiple, because the smaller one always ends up undercutting the other one. You know, if it's not, say, one of your best sellers or you don't want to highlight it more, maybe it's more lucrative to have it in that smaller size, right? But again, I think this is a beautiful piece. I think this could be marketable in a lot of spaces. Like, I find that this face is very elegant. and these designs are very unique and interesting. So, but it still definitely has like that anime influence or like high fantasy influence as well, which are all super popular right now. I know we've talked about that a lot today. So yeah, so I think, anime conventions, I think this is appealing. I think, Comic-Con conventions, I think this is appealing. I even think, the face here and everything is elevated enough that I could see art collectors, galleries, or even like product designs. Like I could definitely see this concept on like a wine bottle that's like new and fresh or whatever. So I think there's a lot of different monetization paths you could take with this particular work. However, looking at the rest of your portfolio, I love this series, but I think there is a bit of inconsistency. So if I say, take a look at this piece, the design of the armor and everything and the rendering and technical skills are really great. But this face feels a little less serious than, say, that first piece that we looked at. It feels a little bit more like anime face to me, which I think is appealing to a younger audience, but might not be appealing to more of a collector's audience or stuff. So it might start limiting you in that capacity. If you're only selling this work, say, at anime cons, I don't think you're going to have any trouble. If you want to expand the types of crowds that are interested in your work, then I think that disconnect starts becoming more of an issue. As there's nothing wrong with like anime face, but it might not be appealing to multiple demographics, where I think that first illustration has a higher potential in that capacity. And I think I see that a lot through your work, where your faces are good, but they're not consistent. Like they feel stylistically a little different, or like they're going for a different audience. And you certainly can have multiple distinct styles, but I think making that divide clearer will help you. And then also that could be contributing to why people are confusing your original work with your fan art. But considering that these two pieces are in the same series, I would say maybe try to have a little bit more consistency in that. Like here's another piece that feels very serious that I could see in a gallery, but also at an anime convention, right? This feels more elevated to me, but also would be appealing to that younger audience as well. So maybe trying to keep that consistency throughout your work.
Hit that subscribe button. Do it. Don't be a coward. Do it.
Okay, our next submission is by Tim. A beautiful piece. So you say it's an older piece and you've had challenges with the background, but overall that you're still proud of it, but that your fan artwork is doing a lot better than your personal work or this piece, and wondering how to adapt your work to make it a bit more marketable. So I will say, technically this piece looks great. I really like the aesthetic. I like the way you did the background. It's really cool. Not every piece is necessarily something that people want to put on their wall, but it doesn't mean that those pieces aren't helping bring in customers or traffic to you as an artist, right? And then they'll come up and be like, oh my God, you're such a good artist. And then they'll still buy the fan art, right? Just because oftentimes that's something that people connect with more on a personal level than, say, your original characters. So keep that in mind. Just because you're not making direct sales on this piece doesn't mean that it's not benefiting you in some ways. When it comes to selling prints, it comes down to, does this piece look good on somebody's wall? Will somebody put this in their living room? I might put this in my game room. I might put this in my dorm, but I might not put it in the family room. You know what I mean? Making it into products that are optimal for the audience that would already be interested in this work, I think could benefit you. I think this image is appealing to the role-playing community, and one of the products that community already utilizes is like a desk mat or a play mat. That could be the type of product you look into adding to your catalog. Okay, this is our next submission. You said that this was a commission and that you're hoping to make more money through your work per month, and that you're spending the majority of your free time working on fundamentals and getting your skills up, which I think is great. Overall, looking at this piece, this is definitely a very complex piece to try to tackle, and I think you did pretty good overall. There are some technical things that I think could use some improvement, mostly where your eye kind of moves through it based on palette. Like I think this green is really just taking my eye off the screen. I think this red wraps my eye around the piece pretty nicely, and then here right into the focal point, so that's good. When it comes to this type of work that is super appealing to like the D&D crowd or like the tabletop role-playing crowd, I think, more is better, because it's always very story-driven. So having this one spread can be great, especially as like an advertisement, but just one-off character sheets can definitely appeal to that crowd. in more of a sustainable commission sense, right? Offering something that's a little bit more sustainable than this huge 5-person spread, right? Like this is going to take forever. It's super complicated. You know, it takes a really high level of skill to pull off. But I think just like one-off OC character commissions is super popular in that group. So, you know, adding that into your portfolio if you haven't already could be a great way to do that. And also a great way to practice that isn't so labor intensive as a spread like this. You would have to pay me a lot of money to take on a commission of this complexity because it's going to take so long to figure out and justify, right? You have 5 characters, you have this action scene, you have a lot of magic effects which are not easy to pull off. Offering things at lower price points will probably get you more commissions and will be easier. Like I would have rather done 5 individual OC commissions than this spread. That being said, these more complex pieces are great for your portfolio. But I definitely do think there are some technical things that are holding you back in this piece. Like, these magic effects aren't necessarily as consistent with everybody. Like, this isn't being pulled off as well as, like, say, this here. The stylistic choices on this beard are working pretty well, but then they're, you know, looking a little weird over here on this longer hair where, like, everything has this crazy edge light, almost as vibrant as the, you know, the source of the light. So that feels a little off to me and can kind of make the piece feel less intentional overall. And for me, if I'm doing a commission, I definitely want to make sure everything feels intentional. Because the second something doesn't feel like an intentional decision on the artist, then it starts feeling like a skill gap. So you definitely want to avoid that with your client work. Pushing the boundaries of your skill and practicing on your own personal work, definitely highly recommend, but I think there's some things here that you're clearly more comfortable with than other things. But overall, I think the movement in this piece is good, and I think there's definitely a huge market for this fantasy D&D-esque themed work. The majority of like my commission requests are normally from that audience. And once you have like a robust portfolio of this type of work, then you can start putting it in front of like different independent game companies or even bigger companies like that. And then maybe catch the eye of like companies like Wizards of the Coast. They're definitely always looking for new artists. So if you can get up to the skill level of the artists that they're hiring, I think that's probably where you want to be to optimize, you know, your profits in this type of community.
What was it again? say.
Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. Or no money and I might not eat my dinner tonight.